All right, let's dive into a little corner of French grammar that honestly can make a huge difference in how natural you sound. We're going to tackle a really common question. How do you say you did something yourself as opposed to having someone else do it for you?
So, picture this. You just spent your entire weekend finally painting the living room or maybe even fixing your own car. You're feeling pretty proud, right? But when you go to tell someone about it in French, how do you make it absolutely clear that you were the one with the paintbrush in hand and not just the one who wrote the check? That's exactly the problem we're going to solve today. So here's our game plan. First, we'll set the stage with the main event, the DIY versus delegated showdown. Then we're going to zoom in on the specific grammar for each one, using mêmes when it's all you and faire for when you're hiring it out. We'll also touch on the special case of soi-même before wrapping it all up to see why this distinction is so important. Okay, let's get right into it. This whole thing really boils down to two core grammatical structures. One for when you're the one doing the work, and the other for when you pass that work on to someone else. And this slide really lays out that fundamental contrast perfectly. On one side, you've got faire soi-même, which the sources define as the subject personally carrying out the action. On the other, faire, where the subject just arranges for somebody else to do it. So the real difference is the role of the subject. Are they the doer or are they the director? Let's kick things off with the DIY side of things. How do you really emphasize that you personally were the one who did the work? Well, it's all about adding that personal touch, grammatically speaking. You take a tonic pronoun, words like moi, toi, lui, elle, and then you just stick the word mêmes right after it. This little combo acts like a grammatical spotlight, shining it right on the person who actually did the action. Now, the one detail you've really got to catch here is the agreement in the plural. See that? For nous, vous, ils, and elles, the word mêmes actually takes an S and becomes mêmes. It's a subtle little rule, but it's absolutely crucial for getting it right. Elle répare elle-même sa voiture. Now, without elle-même, the sentence is simple. She repairs her car. But by adding elle-même, you're really stressing her personal involvement. The source emphasizes that this construction makes it clear she didn't just take it to a mechanic. She's the one under the hood with the wrench. Nous abattons cet arbre nous-mêmes. Again, that nous-mêmes part with the S is the signal that we, as a group, personally did the hard labor. We didn't call a tree removal service. Nope, we did it ourselves. Okay, so we've figured out how to take credit for our own hard work. But what happens when we call in a professional? Let's flip over to the other side of the coin, the grammar of delegation. You use the verb faire, which means to make or to do, and you follow it with the infinitive form of whatever the main action verb is. This construction is your go-to for saying you have something done or get something done. And now for the showdown. Remember that car example from a minute ago? Well, here is its direct counterpart. Elle a fait réparer sa voiture. See the difference? Faire réparer literally means something like made to repair. She didn't fix it herself, she arranged for it to be fixed. The contrast with elle répare elle-même couldn't be clearer. And let's do the same thing for our tree example. Instead of nous abattons nous-mêmes, we now have nous faisons abattre cet arbre. We are having it cut down. The action is the same, that tree is coming down either way, but our role has shifted completely, from laborer to client. And the grammar reflects that change perfectly. Now hold on, there is one more piece to this puzzle. You've probably heard the term soi-même and wondered, well, where does that fit in? The sources are very, very clear that this one is reserved for a really specific, generic case. So, the most important point here is that soi-même is not interchangeable with, say, moi-même or lui-même. You only use it when the subject isn't a specific person, but more of an indefinite one or people in general. You'll see it most often paired with the pronoun on. C'est le genre de travaux qu'on peut faire soi-même. Here, on doesn't mean a specific we, it means one or anyone. It's a general statement about a type of work, not a story about what a specific person did. And that is the perfect time to use soi-même. So we've looked at the two main structures and the one big exception. But why does getting this right actually matter so much? Let's bring it all home for the final verdict. For personal action, you're using a tonic pronoun plus mêmes to emphasize that DIY involvement. For delegated action, you're using faire plus an infinitive to emphasize a service that you've commissioned. The meaning, the construction, and the emphasis all totally distinct. Ultimately, what you should take away from all this is that this isn't some minor nitpicky grammar point. It's essential in really practical situations, like when you're describing services, or even in contracts.
Getting this right is a real hallmark of fluent, natural-sounding French because it clearly communicates the difference between a passion project and a paid service.
And that brings us to the end. So I'll leave you with a final thought to chew on. Think about a recent project or accomplishment in your own life. What's one thing you can now confidently say in French that you did moi-même? Thanks so much for joining me.